Hello and welcome to June's edition of Tax Talk. My name is Sarah Ghaffari and I'm a technical manager in the tax faculty. And with me today I have Frank Haskew. Hello Frank,
Sarah.
Head of Tax. And we are joined by Jill Springbett. Hi Jill.
Hi.
Jill is chairman of our practitioner tax committee, and she's also a tax partner at MGR Weston Kay, which is a firm of chartered accountants based in London. So it's lovely to have you. Thank you for coming in to see us.
It was a pleasure.
We've got lots of things to talk about today. It's been a busy month for tax, but also been quite busy for the tax faculty itself. We've had a little bit of a relaunch, haven't we, Frank?
Well, we've got some new office holders. We had our AGM in May, so we now have a new chairman of the tax faculty, Mary Monfries, and we have Raj Shah, who's a deputy chairman, who's a three-partner firm up in North London.
And sits on the
He's on the
practitioner tax committee.
Yes. So Jill knows him well.
I do.
And also Rebecca Bennyworth has come back as a vice chairman to look particularly at member services. So that's our new tax faculty office holders. And I'm sure everybody knows this, but we also have a former chairman of the tax faculty, Paul Applin, has got the top job of the ICAW president as from last week.
I was looking at his Twitter profile last night actually, and yes, he said it's the biggest day of my professional career, the 6th of June, when he was inaugurated, wasn't it?
So I did see him in the distance this morning, but not to speak to, but he looks a happy man.
Yeah.
So it's all changed.
Well deserved.
It's all changed. Okay, well a little bit more on the tax faculty later, because we've also got a new website which we want to tell you about. But on to tax. We thought first of all we'd just touch on the sort of long-awaited consultation off-payroll working in the private sector, which was published on the 18th of May. And we are looking for comments from members which are due in on the 10th of August, but obviously the sooner the better, that would be great. So the government's looking at how to tackle non-compliance in the private sector, something that they have, I suppose, struggled to really get a grip of in the last few years or so. We know that there have been reforms in the public sector, and so that's one of the options, is to extend those rules. But there's a couple of other options as well in the consultation. Additional record keeping for engagers, and also more due diligence work before the work starts, and ensuring that you've secured your supply chain, your labour supply chain, both of which to me seem like quite a lot of extra administration and practically maybe unlikely.
I was going to say, what do you think the chances are that they might go down those routes? Because they almost seem like afterthoughts, you felt?
Yeah, and in the consultation document it does say government's preferred option is to extend the rules. And I think we would agree that you can't have separate rules for public sector and private sector, but we really need the public sector rules to be working. Jill, I know you've had a few emails and queries on this.
Yes. I've been helping a client who is a TV presenter, and he is covered by the revenue are trying to say that he's covered by IR35, and so I've been heavily engaged in some discussions with the revenue, which they're throwing immense resources at. And 2 guys flew down from Glasgow for an interview with the client. They then flew down on a different day to interview one of the TV companies he works for, and I think they came down to another TV company as well, and it was just ridiculous. And the guys who came down didn't seem that au fait with the nuances of the status rules.
And so we've been talking a little bit about the tool on the website, Check Employment Status tool, which you go through a series of questions, don't you? And it spits out whether you are employed or self-employed. And how have you been finding that?
Well, I've never actually used it. I've talked to people because, say, the BBC are covered, and so I had a chat with people from the BBC about how they're finding it. I know they're really struggling with it because they know tax and they know that it's not accurate. And so I had a look at it myself, and it looks like it's been designed by a committee and people have shoehorned in things, but you might be able to say yes or no to a question, but then they add a little bit extra, which means that actually, well, not really. And you don't have the option of saying none of these apply. So you're led down a pathway which may not be right. So if they try and force you to use that tool, and that is, well, it's just wrong. I tried putting in some examples of clients who I know are definitely self-employed, and it just came out at the end with, we can't determine your status, contact us. So I don't think the revenue will have the resources. If they wheel it out to everybody, they won't have the resources to look at this. So what's going to happen?
And what's quite interesting is, because I know there have been a few roundtables with various professional bodies or business groups and so on already. It seems as though HMRC aren't aware of the issues with the tool, and they are asking for evidence. So really, you know, if we need to get evidence in, and that's where you know, our listeners and our members are really valuable, because they will have that practical evidence. So please send it in to us.
The practical experience,
exactly.
Jill's outlined, doesn't it? That we now
But
use.
the thing is that I was admittedly looking at it on my iPad, but you can't print off all of your answers
To review
all
it
in one go. You seem to be able to do it just by page, which isn't what they normally do anyway. But you know, that way you can see.
Like that will make a difference.
And you can't print off the answer, you know, the questions, so you can't see where the nuance is.
You need the whole thing.
Picture. Frank, we're writing a letter. We're drafting a letter at the moment, aren't we, about all of the public sector nuances. Do you want to just touch on a couple of the others? We've had the accounting for the IR35, which I know I've been working on a lot with you. But that's gone a little bit further now, hasn't it?
The accounting, I believe, I mean, it's been, we've raised it with our financial reporting faculty and also with HMRC, but there's obviously, you know, been concern about effectively should you do it net or gross in the company's accounts.
And HMRC guidance at the moment is saying the net approach.
So I think we clearly need to resolve that with the FRC, so that those conversations, as I understand it, are still ongoing.
Yes.
But hopefully, you know, the guidance will be that effectively, I think consistency of approach and potentially, you know, gross or net either could do, but you've got to be consistent. I think is where we want to get to, and I think that, you know, HMRC would support that as well.
Okay. And then just linking this back, because we're talking about a specific part of the employment issues, I suppose. We're just looking at the IR35 and PSCs and that sort of thing, but we've got the wider issue, haven't we, of the whole employment rights and the Taylor Review. So,
well, I mean, the Taylor Review, of course, was published July last year, and the government responded to it in February, and then launched 4 consultations of their own. So employment status, enforcement of employment rights, agency workers and transparency. And those are all closed now, so we've obviously submitted comments on all those. But the big news this morning, looks like the Supreme Court have given their judgment in the Pimlico Plumbers, which is an employment law case. But it looks like Pimlico Plumbers, the people who was arguing that they were workers, have won unanimously, apparently, in the Supreme Court.
Not self-employed.
And they're not self-employed. So another sort of brick in the wall of this.
And presumably that's just the employment element, not the tax law side of things.
Well, as we know, under employment, the employment law, effectively you can have 3 statuses, can't you? But of course in tax we've really only got 2, and you know, it's up for debate as to where we take all this in the future. But the Supreme Court have just said that these people were not self-employed for employment law purposes. So.
Okay, well, we've got lots of work to do on that one, I think, starting with our letter that we are writing to government to outline again the issues that we've got in the public sector. One consultation that we have responded to was the VAT registration threshold, which came off the back of the OTS report. That must have been last year now, looking at whether it's at the right level or it should be lowered or increased. We did a short survey, didn't we? Yes,
we did. Well, the government issued a call for evidence on it, and we did do a little survey ourselves. I mean, it's not statistically robust, but actually it was pretty consistent with what we'd said in our response to the OTS as well, which and the statistics, as I remember, were that half of the respondees thought that actually the VAT threshold should be increased. About a third thought it was fine as it is, and about a sixth thought it should be lowered, and that was actually quite consistent with what we said last year. So I think overall, you know, the message coming out of it is that the VAT, the registration threshold, is actually a major simplification for smaller businesses.
Didn't it originally start at was it
5,000? But it was.
That was a
that
while
was
ago.
a long. We were
1973.
73. Yes. So.
No comment.
Yeah, we won't go there. We won't go there. But today, if that was indexed up, it would be about 50,000.
Okay.
But back in the 1990, I think it was 93, the government decided to actually increase it significantly as a simplification.
Yeah,
that
of
was
course.
the rationale for it. And the view of our members, by and large, is that it really still holds. In fact, in many ways, it holds more than it did then because of yet more increases in the VAT legislation.
And I think we were talking, Jill, weren't we, about this kind of fear that if it is lowered, there'll be implications elsewhere.
Yeah, so the Making Tax Digital, it's linked to the VAT, it's linked to the VAT threshold, so if it's lowered, presumably that means they would need to extend that to more people. So then, that would undo all the good we did, getting them to delay it.
I think that's entirely right, and of course, the double whammy of then having to not only Making Tax Digital, but potentially keeping digital records. So, for small businesses, like hitting you in the face, really. I think.
Yeah, and the financial implications for the businesses that maybe at the moment are managing their trade, at a comfortable level without having to register. So, okay, all right, then. Thank you for that. Moving on, let's cover the next big one, if that's okay. I think Frank. Employee benefit trusts have been sort of simmering away in the background. I did actually see an email come around from HMRC about their talking points webinars about the settlements and paying the loan charge. Did you want to just remind us of what?
Yeah, well, I do feel I've drawn the short straw with this one, Sarah, because I would probably have Mr. Bickley here talking about it, but. Yes, I mean, it's been kicking around for a long time as an issue. I mean, I think it's first really started in the 80s, and then clearly in the 90s we started to sort of see it happening in a big way. So, and then we've had various tax cases on it, and in particular we had the landmark Rangers decision, Supreme Court decision last year, back in July, where effectively they came up with almost bold a googly, so to speak, that they thought that these the payments, when they were even put into the trust, were in respect of employment and should have had PAYE deducted, which wasn't, if you like, where the cases were originally starting from. But I think the real problem we're coming up against here is that we've got the Finance Number 2 Act 2017 last year, so we've now got this employee loan charge coming up, which is potentially really draconian. So if you effectively have a loan outstanding at the 6th of April 2019, then effectively the benefit of that is going to be brought into tax, but the real sting in the tail is that it's going to apply in relation to any loan you've had outstanding post 6th of April 1999. So 20 years is potentially going to be brought into tax come 6th of April 2019. I mean, that is a major. I mean, there's been a lot of furore about is it retrospective taxation. So, but the fact is, we've got the rules, so it's going to be a major problem for a lot of people. So, as you said, Sarah, I mean, what can you do to get out of it? And the options, firstly, I think, are that HMRC are trying to encourage people to settle. Yeah. So, as you mentioned, there's a settlement effectively opportunity out there, which, as at last week, I mean, the deadline originally was the 31st of May, but they've actually extended it to the 30th of September. I'm not sure quite what one reads into that, but hopefully, maybe this is major for a lot of people, and I think people are only just waking up to it. So, I think HMRC are keen to try and get settlements here. I think I think they want to get closure and move on. So people do need to look at the settlement opportunity and see what they can do. I mean, obviously the other thing is, you can repay the loan before the 6th of April 2019. If you do that, then we think you should be okay. But I think there's still question marks about, well, particularly after Rangers, about whether you do get finality. So I think there's question marks still there. And obviously the other thing is, if you've got the loan, then come 6th of April, potentially you need to pay the charge. So we're already seeing a lot of member concerns coming through about this. So I think we probably do need to have a very close look at it. But I think
so, yeah.
people are really going to need to look very carefully at the various options, because each case will be different, of course.
And doing nothing is just not an option.
Well, I mean, everywhere you look, you can't just do nothing. I mean, you've got to step. The government have now made it abundantly clear that these sorts of arrangements are beyond the pale, and you can't just ignore it.
So we might be looking to do some thinking in that space again. We did a lot of work on the consultations and the draft legislation, didn't we? But we might revisit and see what we've got on our new website.
We did.
That would be helpful.
Yeah, we did. But I think we're now obviously moving to the problems of implementation. And I would just say I think HMRC are very keen to try, as I said, and settle. Have talked a lot about time to pay, and particularly. There's a whole range of people who went into these, I think, from the people who knew exactly what they were doing to people who were almost forced into them or didn't realise. So I think HMRC are alive to those, the sort of different categories of people. Yeah. But I think there's probably going to be a lot to do before the 6th of April 2019. So I think we will be reviewing it quite a significant
date, isn't it? MTD, loan charges and Brexit.
Almost Brexit, So you name it, we've got it.
Right, well, on to happier new. Well, we just mentioned one of them. Should we talk about making tax digital? We do love it, don't we? I think we should probably mention it. So in terms of where we are, the pilots are ongoing for income tax and for VAT. There's about 20 software developers in the income tax pilot. So you might say that's not as many as we might have thought, but we have got, that's not coming in until 2020 at the earliest. There are 4 software products listed now on gov.uk, so people can start looking at what's out there. That's Absolute, Forbes, Iris and Rhino. And the pilot has also just been extended to those who have property income, so landlords can now join the pilot as well as the self-employed. So that's where we are with income tax. On the VAT side of things, that one is not in public beta testing just yet. I know a small number of developers are in the private testing with HMRC, but I suppose we know that spreadsheets are an acceptable link. We're expecting to see this in the VAT notice, the updated VAT notice when we get it, a bit more on that, but we know that spreadsheets will be okay. And we know that some bridging software to take the data, almost make it cloud-based and send it directly to HMRC, will be made available by software developers. So for VAT, I think the thinking is that the majority who are on spreadsheets will continue to do that. Yeah. But obviously the message is to get on board, to try and be digital and to think about how your practice operates or your clients operate. But in the time frame we have, spreadsheets could be a useful short-term, medium-term solution.
That sounds...
One thing we actually did learn last week when we met with our software advisory group, which is the professional bodies, software developers and HMRC, there was a bit of a revelation about the business tax account because as I understand, agents do have access to the business tax account, but even represented clients will need to at times go in there themselves if they're managing their agents, if they need to confirm personal information, those sorts of things. That won't be done outside via email. That will be done through the business tax account. And it's not that easy to set one up.
Well, no.
Short answer.
And, some clients have difficulty getting into IT issues, and we've found a great deal of difficulty, say, getting clients set up for ATED. I mean, some of those admittedly are overseas and they're not used to UK systems, but it has been really difficult. We can't see what they can see. So we can't, if the revenue could help by mirroring the screen, so we could say, well, this is what you should see. So
you can talk them through it.
We can talk it through, maybe the number of the boxes, that sort of thing. But it is really difficult because you can't.
From what I heard at the JAS June meeting the other week, HMRC are struggling with some of getting the agent actually access to be able to see and do everything your clients can do, and that it's probably going to be over a longer period of time than maybe they were hoping.
And actually we have just heard about a number of projects, HMRC projects in general, that are being sort of put on a back burner, if you like, or they're not being prioritised. As John Thompson wrote to the Treasury, and making tax digital for individuals is one of those that was confirmed. It's still happening, but at a slower pace. Do you know where the which bits they're not looking at the moment? Is it? I don't think. I think it might around simple assessment. Maybe not moving some groups into that. That's not a priority at the moment. I think Caroline has written a news item on that one, so we'll probably get some details soon. We'll have to ask her too. Yeah, exactly.
I think there's been some developments literally in this last 24 hours. I think, but we'll need to have a look.
Okay, lovely. Right, moving on then. Shall we talk about our new website very briefly?
Yes.
Frank, do you want to? Well, it's been a 2-year project. It's been a work in progress.
It's been a 2-year project, and people like Sarah and my colleagues, Anita, for instance, have been very involved, but also our digital content team have been working very closely with us. But I mean, what we were looking to do was to come up with a website that was much more intuitive, but in particular that we'd have all the tax material in one place, because there's quite a lot of tax material across the ICAW site, and it was pretty fragmented, I think.
So there's the library content, faculty content, and then general content too. Is that there as
taxes touches on so many things, doesn't it? So we've got all articles done by, say, the special interest groups, for instance. So trying to bring it all into one place. We'll also develop the hub idea, which of course you've started using with MTD, which seems to be very successful. So, cleaner, much better navigation, all under one roof. And the feedback we had so far is that 90% of the people who went into the site found what they were looking for.
Very good number.
Which was generally thought to be very good. Excellent. So I think we carry on developing it. We've got an IR35 hub, as you know, we're developing
and
as well.
And all people need to go to now is icaw.com/tax, and that gets you everything that we have on tax, and then you can choose by topic. Or if you're a faculty member, you can just go to the faculty pages to see what your exclusive content is.
That's
so hopefully a much easier journey for people.
No, and
very good.
So we'll be continuing to develop it.
Excellent. One thing that I've skipped over, I don't know how I could, the finance bill. Sorry, completely forgot about that. Just keeping you on your toes. Finance number 3 bill?
I believe that's right, although of course by the time it comes, we get it will be the Finance Act 2019, I guess.
Yes, and when are we expecting the bill?
6th of July.
6th of July, okay. What sort of things? We did the response to entrepreneurs relief on gains before dilution, so we should probably see something on that.
I mean, there's a few things that will be in there. We've got the royalties withholding tax provisions, which are potentially going to be starting 6th of April 2019.
And maybe something on the intangible fixed assets. There was something about the 2002, the pre and the post rules there from a corporation tax perspective.
I mean, the other thing as well is these profit fragmentation rules, which I think we're all sort of scratching our heads a bit about. Yes. But I think we're going to get draft clauses on those as well. Okay. But the response, I mean, we didn't submit our response that long ago because the consultation deadline didn't shut that long ago.
No, it was only last week or so, wasn't it?
A few weeks ago, I think it was. But I think, the general view was, why do you need all these rules? Because potentially a lot of it seemed almost like evasion, and you've got so many other provisions on the face of it you could be using. So we weren't over enamoured, we weren't against the principle of trying to stop this sort of activity, but we think really they've got all the tools they already need to tackle it.
What they need to do is actually get on and tackle it with their tools.
Okay, and we should see consultation responses presumably before we get the bill, would we?
Probably all at the same time.
All at the same time.
I'm guessing.
Okay, so July's looking busy. No holidays.
No holidays.
Okay,
no.
Message point taken. Frank, we also looked at the Treasury Select Committee inquiries, didn't we? There was one on VAT, avoidance and evasion.
We did.
Briefly say anything on that?
Very briefly, I mean, the Treasury Committee and a subcommittee of it had 3 inquiries running. VAT and the tax gap was the main committee, and then also tax avoidance and evasion and tax inquiries and managing disputes.
Yes.
So there have been 3 of them running. We submitted some evidence to all of those, and at the moment we've had there will be some evidence sessions starting next week, particularly on the tax inquiries.
Have you been called?
We have been approached
Yeah.
on that, but we won't be going next week, but I know some of our other members will be.
Okay.
But we might be doing another one, but I suspect we'll be seeing more evidence sessions going forward. But at the moment they're not public, our responses, but hopefully we'll have permission from the Park fairly shortly,
Get
so
those
we'll
up
be
on
able
the
to make them available.
Yeah. Something else that I've just remembered as well is that we had the OTS report on savings income. And Jill, we were talking about this earlier because one of their 9 recommendations is to review the personal savings allowance.
I definitely.
Please look at it.
Yes, please. Yes.
We did 2 webinars on that in the last year or so, and just trying to work through all the different permutations. And we know there were problems with the software coming out with different...
Yes. It's just been a nightmare, and it's such a lot of extra work. And yes.
Okay. Right, well we shall look forward to seeing what comes of that then.
Yes.
Okay.
Spoken from the heart, I think.
Absolutely spoken from the heart, yes. It's just bonkers.
Okay, I think that probably gives us some time just to go through our upcoming events. We've got quite a lot on. We have a loss webinar tomorrow, so corporate losses, the new rules for carry forward losses. That's with myself and Pete Miller. That's tomorrow at 11 a.m. and you can still register if you haven't already. We've got about 800 people for that one. That's MTD numbers almost.
Yeah.
So
Gosh.
this is clearly it's the fact that it's billed at only impacting companies with large profits, but actually the admin is a requirement for everybody. And then we have a property income webinar on the 9th of July, which Sue Moore will be going through some practical bits and pieces. We've got the Wyman Symposium.
Yes,
on
the 11th of July. So that's going to be, the title of it is Employment Status. What's the answer? So
Will somebody tell us?
Well, somebody tell us. Well, we've got 4 speakers, and there's been a notice put up on the website. So if anyone is interested in attending, please drop us a note or visit the website.
Excellent.
So it should be exciting.
And our flagship annual tax conference, we have a new date, which is Friday the 28th of September. And we have a range of speakers. We've got Paul Aplin speaking, our new president, Rebecca Bennyworth, Peter Rainey, lots of other people. And the details of that are going up onto our website next week, so we'll be able to communicate that to members. So yes, lots going on.
Excellent.
I think that's probably all we have time for today. So thank you very much for watching. The next Tax Talk will be on Wednesday the 18th of July, which is 1 week later than usual. But Anita Monteith will be hosting that one, so we hope to see you there. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you. Goodbye.